Hey everyone, so I definitely miss talking to you, though Lily and Ray and myself and Miss Dina have been testing Teams like crazy, so hopefully it works for everyone tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, assuming Teams works, because Dina's going to be there to troubleshoot for everybody, and then if everybody can get on, we're going to have an All American Boys meeting, which I think is something that we've been looking forward to because it is definitely something that is worth reading together versus reading apart. So I am going to talk about that second Rashad chapter this time. So I am right about on page 43 in my book. It is the second section in which he talks. And again, I'm really just going to go over a couple plot points and maybe give my opinion on a couple things. And it's really just kind of to get everybody thinking. So when we go in tomorrow, we can kind of jump right in, assuming that everything works. Hi, Iris. So the first thing that I want to talk about is repetition. So he uses repetition a lot in his sections. So the first thing that we see is he uses the word custody. And he starts the first 3, 4, 5 paragraphs with just the word custody in italics. Now, it is important that he puts it in italics because it shows that it is not maybe something that he's saying out loud or even saying in the narrative, something that he's thinking over and over and over again. So the first thing that I want to bring up is potentially why that's the word that he keeps repeating. He's not repeating words about his injuries or words about what happened. He's repeating the word custody over and over again for the start of literally 5 paragraphs. So he talks about how he's brought into the hospital with handcuffs still on, which is kind of this really powerful image, right? He talks about how there's blood coming from his nose like a faucet with rusty pipes, that his head is pounding, that his breathing hurts, that the jacket, the one my brother gave me, is now torn, and then he kind of brings up that he's still handcuffed. So we have this image of him rolling into the hospital with handcuffs still on, but in this state where there's no way he could run at all. So what are those handcuffs for? I would say that they're more symbolic than they are to actually keep him from going anywhere, and that's a conversation we can have as well. I also think that he does a really good job with the imagery here of really making us kind of see and feel for him in that moment. So he talks about going through the hospital, then he talks about the police officers coming in, that the police officer explains to my folks that I had been caught stealing. Not only that, but I had been charged with resisting arrest and public nuisance. There was no point in trying to explain. I could barely breathe. Now, I would like to kind of point out something there too, and that he says the police officer explained that I had been caught stealing. Not that he is being accused of stealing, not that he was caught potentially stealing. He was caught stealing is the language that he remembers hearing. Now, again, we're hearing everything from his point of view, so it is possible that there was other language used, but I think this is one of those cases where we kind of hear he was caught stealing instead of he's being accused of stealing, and it is supposed to resonate with us. Everything has been decided for him at this point, rather than maybe feeling like he can say something. And again, who knows us what was actually said, but it's the way he interpreted it, and he interpreted I was caught. They say I was caught stealing. There's no room for error there. It's not we believe he was stealing or anything like that. Then we have his mom is kind of doing his, oh baby, how are you feeling? He's at least I was alive, I'm okay. You need to tell me what happened. So his mother is kind of being motherly at the same point as like, you need to tell me what happened. She's calling him pet names. She wants to know how he is. But then his dad kind of comes in, and his dad starts with, help me out here, son. I need to know what the hell you were thinking. Shoplifting. So his dad starts with, you need to help me out here. Hi, Pew. You need to help me out here. So he's like, you got to tell me what's going on. But then he then repeats that language, you were caught shoplifting. So despite saying you need to help me out and kind of let me know what's going on, his dad is repeating the same kind of accusatory language, which I think goes again with we tend to believe authority figures. And if they're saying that somebody did something, we tend to believe it. I didn't steal nothing. right? Which again, we kind of have this language thing going on. He's using double negatives. He doesn't speak in the most proper of dialects, which probably gives certain people an opinion of him. And I'm not saying that we have that opinion or I have that opinion, but we definitely are going to see this kind of use of dialect back and forth. Well, then why did the cop say you did? Dad replied. So he's not kind of discounting everything he says, but he's like, okay, if you didn't do it, why am I hearing that you did? Instead of just saying, tell me your side of the story. So there is kind of an accusatory spin on the whole thing, that it is more likely that the police are telling the truth than that Rashad is telling the truth. So then Mom's kind of goes through and she's talking to the nurse, and then we have the story, right? The way that he tells the story. I bent down, I dug in my bag for my phone. This lady didn't see me. She tripped over me. It went flying. The dude at the register, the cop rushed up on me and yoked me up all crazy, and that's it. So he doesn't get into a lot of detail, which kind of doesn't help his story that much. The more detail we have, we tend to believe. So Mom was horrified. Dad had on that "son, you aren't telling me everything" look. It was clear to him I had to have done something wrong to bring this on. Were your pants sagging? Dad interrogated. Now, Dad is not saying that he did something as in stealing. Dad is saying he had to have done something to bring this on, which doesn't necessarily mean that he did anything wrong. So I'd like to differentiate between that, because I know that we kind of have a lot of negative feelings towards his father right now. But his father's not saying you did something wrong. He's saying you must have done something. And his dad then makes that comment, oh, it matters if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, and he kind of trails off, which goes to, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, then it's a duck, right? Mom glared at him. David, this is your son we're talking about. He's never been suspended. But they don't know that. What they see is what he presents. And it sounds like he presented himself just like another, and then he trailed off. So Dad wanted him to kind of present himself differently. And Dad's, again, not saying that he did anything wrong. What he's pointing out is this idea that the way that we present ourselves directly impacts the way that people treat us and the way that other people see us. So he says, they don't know that. I know he never got suspended. They don't know that. He's pointing out that people only see the way you present yourself on the outside, and therefore the way you present yourself on the outside matters. Whether this is fair or not is not really the discussion right there. It's his father's point is just this idea of, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I'm going to assume it's a duck, whether it's a duck or not, right? Then his dad kind of says, since you were young men, I've kind of taught you. And he says, never fight back, never talk back. Keep your hands up, keep your mouth shut, and do what they ask you to do, and you'll be fine. Now, he's not, again, saying this is fair. He's saying this is what I've told you guys to do since you were kids. We kind of get into that back and forth thing. I was being blamed for something I didn't do, and not just by that stupid store clerk and that asshole cop, but by my father. A burning sensation rose in my chest and stomach, the fractured ribs sizzling. My eyes began to water with frustration. I did. My voice shattered. You don't gotta believe me, but I did. And that's when Spoonie shows up, right? So Rashad's trying to explain himself to his dad, and his dad is kind of doing his best to try to understand what happened without understanding that perhaps the cop just did the wrong thing completely. He's like, what did you do? What did you bring up? What happened? Because to his father, there had to be some sort of precursor. If you were doing everything right and not just not stealing, if you were behaving the way that you're expected to behave, then things like this shouldn't have happened. Then we get into kind of how Spoonie and Dad don't get along. They can't see eye to eye on most things. Dad was all about discipline and believed that if you work hard, good things happen no matter what. Of course, part of working hard to him was looking the part and dressing the part. So Dad is of this opinion that if you try your hardest, good things will always come to you. And this might be where we see him rebelling so much about the idea that Rashad didn't do anything wrong and still had all these problems, because he's trying to rationalize that with his entire worldview, which is that if you do the right thing, right things happen to you, right? And when something conflicts with your entire worldview, it's kind of hard to get over, right? Then we have Spoonie getting all upset. He was always calling Spoonie a rebel without a cause. Then he kind of points down, he could have been killed. Dad points out, but he wasn't. So their dad's trying to look on the side of things that's that, but he could have been, And guess what, Dad? That ROTC uniform was right in the bag, but it didn't matter. So he's trying to say that appearance didn't matter, where Dad is trying to point out that appearance did matter. So then we kind of get into his diagnosis at the hospital, that he's going to have to stay for a couple days. When Spoonie introduces himself, he introduces himself as Randolph, okay, which would be his true name, and he says they use the term government name versus kind of the way he's called otherwise. And I would like to also point out that as much as Spoonie says that appearances don't matter and that everyone should be treated equally no matter what their appearance is, he doesn't tell the doctor his name is Spoonie. Despite the fact that that's the way everyone refers to in the book, he does say that his name is Randolph, which kind of shows that he also is aware that the way that I present myself is going to matter in the long run. And then I just want to go back to, I want to end on this ending where Spoonie says, I'm not going to sit here and let them sweep this under the rug like this is okay. And Rashad says, I know. And I wanted to tell him to let it go. To just let me heal, let me leave the hospital, let me go to court, let me do whatever stupid community service they wanted me to do, and let me go back to normal. I mean, I had seen this happen so many times, not personally, but on the TV and in the news. And he kind of goes on, he's like, I don't need that. I don't need to have to go through all that. But I knew not to bother saying it, not to Spoonie, no point, because he'd agree this was normal and that was the problem. So Rashad's saying, I don't know if I want to go through all of this just for nothing to change. And he knows that he can't say that to Spoonie because Spoonie will respond that the fact that it's normal is exactly why it needs to change, right? So then we kind of get into the ending there, and the ending is, there was nothing I could do to calm him down. This was not going away. This was not something getting swept under the rug of, oh, well, not if Spoonie had anything to do with it. So I'd like to just kind of end on that, because it's not if Rashad has anything to do with it. It's if Spoonie has anything to do with it, who's not the one who actually went through it himself. So that's just my quick recap with, a little bit of commentary. And I will hopefully talk to you guys on video chat tomorrow. Thank you.